On June 25, 2009, the world was shocked by the news: the king of pop, Michael Jackson, had passed away. The next day, theories started spreading everywhere. Some people claimed he wasn't really dead, that maybe he was watching us from somewhere. Rumors even said his body wasn't inside the coffin. But that story was actually made up by his family so fans wouldn't insist on seeing him one last time. So today, let's talk about how the king reached his legendary status through unimaginable struggles, and what his final days were really like. But before we start, don't forget to drop a comment and subscribe. Now, switch on your universe mode, because nothing's going to disturb you while watching this. Alright, let's rewind back to the 1960s. Gary, Indiana. Michael Jackson was just a 2-year-old kid, living with his 9 brothers and sisters in a tiny 2-bedroom, 600-square-foot house. His father, Joseph Jackson, had tried to make it as a musician himself but failed. So he decided to turn his children into stars instead. There was a piano in the basement and a belt in Joseph's hand. The belt was for any kid who didn't practice hard enough. Rehearsals started at 5 p.m. and went on for 6 hours straight. The kids were beaten constantly. Since Michael's older brothers were bigger, they sometimes found ways to avoid the belt. But Michael, the youngest and most talented, always obeyed without question. That fear of his father stayed with him for life. In an interview years later, Michael admitted, "When my father walked into the room, I'd feel pure terror inside me." His relationship with his brothers wasn't much better. Sometimes they literally pushed him off stage. Other times, they mocked his singing voice. Fans loved him as the cute little boy with the angelic voice, but his brothers seemed jealous, maybe because he was more talented than all of them. Still, no matter how much pain he went through off stage, once he got in front of the crowd, Michael transformed into another world entirely. For 4 long years, the Jackson brothers performed anywhere they could: bars full of drunk people, sticky-floored diners, small talent shows where nobody cared. They did it all chasing just one big break. And in 1968, that chance finally came. The Jackson 5 signed with Motown Records. Suddenly, they weren't just some local kids singing in bars, they were performing for a global audience, mostly white at the time. They became Motown's first major black franchise. Their synchronized dance moves, shiny costumes, big smiles, and endless energy pulled everyone in. But while fans saw joy on stage, behind the curtain Michael was still just a little boy being pushed around. In 1969, at only 11 years old, Michael started doing solo performances. CBS producers said, "He can control his facial expressions like a pro." But his father never let him forget who was in charge. He would threaten Michael with consequences if he didn't follow orders. Michael even started wearing hats to hide the bruises left on his face from his father's beatings. Night after night of sleepless rehearsals left him exhausted, yet he still smiled on stage. Because perfection was all he knew. He didn't have friends, he didn't have a normal childhood. Michael wasn't really a person, he was his father's project. He didn't read his own contracts. He couldn't play like a normal kid. Every dollar went straight into his father's pocket. Michael was treated like a robot, shipped off to shows and tours, no matter what. Nearly 10 years passed like that. During that time, the Jackson 5 became massive stars. Their hit "I Want You Back" went straight to #1, and 4 more songs after it also hit #1 in a row. They toured all over America, even Europe. Their faces were everywhere, on posters, lunch boxes, even fish tanks. And Michael? He became the face of the group. But by the late 70s, he couldn't take it anymore. One day, he completely disappeared. He stopped answering calls. Nobody, not his brothers, not his manager, not even his father, knew where he was. When he finally came back, he wasn't the same. He put a stack of canceled contracts on his father's desk and said, "You're not my manager anymore." On August 10, 1979, Off the Wall was released, Michael Jackson's first true solo album as an adult. And with it, he finally told the world he wanted to be his own person. But being a black man in America meant he had to deal with racism and discrimination everywhere he went. That's when he also began struggling with his appearance, including the color of his skin. Around this time, Michael broke his nose during a stage accident and had surgery. The official story was that it was to fix his breathing. But the unofficial story was different. His father and others had always mocked him, saying, "You've got a big, wide, ugly nose." Not long after, Michael went through another surgery to reshape his nose, trying to make it perfect. Then came a third one. While the public obsessed over his changing face, Michael dropped an album that would change music forever. In 1982, Thriller was released. Out of its 9 tracks, 7 went straight to the top of the charts. The music video for Thriller ran 13 minutes long, with a $500,000 budget, and it was played on every TV screen across America. In Japan, kids studied it in schools. In the Philippines, prisoners even recreated the choreography. Thriller went on to sell over 70 million copies worldwide, making it the most successful album in history. But it was more than just music, it created a whole new model: the album as a movie, the artist as a brand, the music video as a work of art. If you want to see how it looked back then, check my Telegram channel. From that point forward, Michael wasn't just famous in the US, he was the face of the entire global music industry. He won 8 Grammys in a single night. MTV, which had barely shown black artists before, opened its doors because Michael kicked them down. But with his success, he also realized something: for a black man, there were still doors that remained closed. Even at the peak of his fame. Then came the biggest commercial deal of the era, a $5 million contract with Pepsi in 1984. That was the largest endorsement deal of its time. His face was everywhere, on store windows, billboards, magazines. In Tokyo, thousands of fans camped outside his hotel. In Mexico, a statue of him was erected while he was still alive. In Los Angeles, ads even ran telling teenagers, "Get your nose done like Michael." But just when it seemed like everything was going perfectly, disaster struck. During the filming of a Pepsi commercial in 1984, a pyrotechnics accident set Michael's hair on fire during the 3rd take. The flames spread across the top of his head. Doctors diagnosed him with 2nd-degree burns, and he was hospitalized. He received a $1.5 million settlement, but the real damage was already done. From then on, Michael wore wigs and even tattooed parts of his scalp to cover the burns. Just as those scars were beginning to fade, new spots started appearing, white patches on his skin. By 1986, the media was buzzing, "Michael is turning white. What is he doing to his skin?" Michael stayed silent, but the truth was that he had vitiligo, a condition that destroys skin pigment and causes blotchy white patches, often made worse by stress and depression. The first spots showed up on his back and on his right hand. That's why he began wearing a single white glove, not as a fashion statement, but out of necessity. Later, it became his iconic symbol. He fought the disease with everything he could: bleaching creams, makeup, umbrellas to shield himself from the sun. These weren't cosmetic choices, they were medical ones. Vitiligo makes the skin extremely sensitive to UV rays. Just 15 minutes in the sun could leave him with severe burns. The treatments were harsh. He used powerful medication normally reserved for extreme cases. The drugs were toxic and came with serious side effects. Because of this, rumors started spreading that Michael had undergone skin transplants. But neither in his lifetime nor in the autopsy was that ever confirmed. His dermatologist and doctors insisted, no, he never had a transplant. He used medications, makeup, and sun protection, that's all. Honestly, even I used to believe he had skin grafts done, at least twice. But while preparing this video, I realized that wasn't true. The public didn't believe the doctors, though. Because disease didn't fit the myth. By 1993, speculation reached its peak. That year, during an interview, Michael finally confirmed his diagnosis. He pulled back his sleeve, showed the white spots on his hand and neck, and said, "I'm a proud Black American. I'm proud of my race, proud of who I am." But even those words didn't stop the criticism. To this day, many people, despite all the medical evidence, still believe he bleached his skin. In the 1990s, part of the audience even saw him as a traitor, someone trying to erase his blackness. Michael, though, never tried to defend himself. Instead, he poured his mystery into his art. In his music videos and lyrics, he planted hidden messages, symbols, things people would spend years trying to interpret. He never explained them. And that silence only made the world even more obsessed with him. Now let's talk about how the king ended up under suspicion. Who sold out Michael Jackson, and for what price? Who profited from him? Who sought revenge? Who cashed in on book deals and contracts? Who pressured children into testifying? And why did someone who had become a symbol of childhood innocence for an entire generation end up being accused of crimes against children? In 1988, Michael bought a massive property in California and named it Neverland. Nearly 2,700 acres, worth $17 million. On it, he built an amusement park, a movie theater, a train station just for kids, playgrounds, a recording studio, even a special room for the hearing impaired. By the mid-1990s, the media began asking suspicious questions. Why would a grown man build a train station for kids? Michael could have bought a TV network if he wanted. Instead, he built a giant playground. Why? At first, the industry stayed silent. Michael was selling out stadiums, pulling in millions, and nobody dared to question what went on at Neverland. Every year, dozens of managers, lawyers, and security guards surrounded him. If he truly had been a predator, wouldn't someone have noticed? Then, in 1993, the first accusation came. A 13-year-old boy from Los Angeles, Jordan Chandler, a creative kid. Michael had become a savior figure to him. He invited him to Neverland, they sang together, went to premieres, met celebrities. Jordan even called Michael a friend. Michael once said of him, "He sees the world the way I do." But the story didn't begin with the boy, it began with his father, Evan Chandler. A dentist who once dreamed of writing Hollywood screenplays, a man who had fought bitter custody battles with his ex-wife. He was the one who took Michael to court, triggering an investigation of Neverland. Police searched the ranch, seizing more than 200 items. Michael himself was examined by authorities for over 2 hours. Later he said, "I've never been so humiliated in my life." Despite the thorough check, forensic experts found no signs of abuse. But by then, it didn't matter. The case had already spilled into the press. Late-night shows mocked him with cartoons. TV commentators gave serious lectures about him. Celebrities distanced themselves, afraid association would hurt their careers. Album sales dropped. Pepsi suspended its partnership. And Michael, the king of pop, was broken. Rumors spread that he couldn't sleep. Doctors prescribed him heavy sleeping pills. Concerts were cancelled, costing him tens of millions of dollars. There was no hard evidence, yet the fact that Michael seemed so emotionally shattered only made the public more suspicious. Maybe he had done it. And Michael? He never explained himself. As the trial dragged on, his health began collapsing. His lawyers told him, if he didn't settle the case with money, the stress could kill him. Finally, Michael gave in. He never admitted guilt, but to put an end to the nightmare, he agreed to pay about $23 million to settle. At the time he said, "I just want this horrible dream to be over." Later, information surfaced about the people who had accused him. Evan Chandler, the father of the first boy, ended up taking his own life. Perhaps the money never brought him happiness. Gavin Arvizo's mother turned out to have been involved in various frauds. Meanwhile, the music industry stayed silent. TV channels stopped airing Michael's videos. The Grammys didn't mention his name. Sony refused to renew his contract. What made things even worse was an ongoing war with Sony that had started in the early 2000s. I wasn't going to bring it up before, but it's essential to understand what happened, so listen carefully. In 2002, Michael publicly accused Sony's CEO of sabotage and racism. His statement went worldwide. A month later, Sony stopped promoting his Invincible album. Music videos weren't filmed, the marketing budget was cut, the album was buried. Michael openly said, "Sony is deliberately trying to destroy my career because I come from a black family." But that wasn't the whole story. In 1995, Michael had merged his own ATV music catalog with Sony's catalog, creating Sony/ATV, one of the biggest music publishing catalogs in the world. At that time, Michael owned 50% of it, but Sony made most of the decisions. As the years went by, they ignored his input entirely. After Michael's death, his share went to his heirs. But in 2016, because of debts, that share was sold entirely to Sony for $750 million. The very company Michael had publicly accused of sabotage ended up owning his entire musical legacy. In his last days, Michael's reputation was under constant attack. TV channels aired documentary after documentary about Neverland. New witnesses who'd never testified in court suddenly appeared. All of it destroyed his public image. Audiences greeted him with boos instead of applause. Even his family wasn't fully behind him. Some relatives gave negative interviews. His mother stayed silent. Michael was completely alone. By 2009, he decided to return to the stage. He signed a contract to perform 50 shows in London, a project called This Is It. Tickets sold out instantly. Michael rehearsed up to 10 hours a day, personally involved in every detail. But by then, his body couldn't handle such an intense schedule. His weight dropped to 110 pounds, 50 kilograms. He sometimes went weeks without proper sleep. His personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, started giving him a powerful anesthetic called propofol to help him sleep. This drug is normally used only in surgical operations, under strict hospital supervision with oxygen and monitoring equipment. But Michael was receiving it at home, with no safeguards. On June 25, 2009, Michael was in his bedroom. Charlie Chaplin's film played on the TV. Michael lay unconscious. When Murray entered the room and found him not breathing, he didn't call 911 right away. Instead, he tried to revive him himself. Later, he admitted he delayed calling for help and didn't alert security. He made several phone calls, but not the one that mattered. Only 40 minutes later did he finally dial 911. Paramedics arrived and pronounced Michael Jackson dead. Conrad Murray was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years in prison, though he served only 2. His medical license was revoked. The internet quickly filled with conspiracy theories. Some claimed the body had been secretly removed. Others said a double had been used. Because the FBI didn't release all the details, people began to believe he had faked his death. Photos surfaced, supposedly showing him alive in Brazil. But the truth is, none of those theories have ever been confirmed. The reality was much simpler and sadder. By the time he reached 50, Michael was in very poor health. A man of 5 feet 9 inches, 175 centimeters, weighing only 110 pounds, working 9 to 10 hours a day, going without sleep for weeks, then taking hospital-grade drugs just to rest. It was the natural, tragic end of the story. The worst part is that the king of pop left this world with his name still clouded by unproven accusations. Even after death, people continued to blame him. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I love you all, take care of yourselves, and for now, goodbye.